First of all, this is what Isaac Hale thought about Joseph Smith.
This is what it says. Smith and his father, with several other money diggers, boarded at my house while they were employed in digging for a mine that they supposed had been opened and worked by the Spaniards many years since. Young Smith gave the money diggers great encouragement at first, but when they had arrived in digging too near the place where he had stated an immense treasure would be found, he said the enchantment was so powerful that he could not see. They then became discouraged and soon after dispersed. This took place around the 17th of November, 1825, and one of the company gave me his note for $12.68 for his board, which is still unpaid.
Now notice that Isaac Hale is referring to Joseph Smith and the group that he worked with, that were working, I'm assuming, for Josiah Stowell in this context. He's already using the term money digger. He already had that term money digger before he marries his daughter, because in the third paragraph of that affidavit, what does he say?
After these occurrences, young Smith made several visits at my house and at length asked my consent to his marrying my daughter Emma. This I refused and gave him my reasons for so doing, some of which were that he was a stranger and followed a business that I could not approve.
Now, are we to assume that Isaac Hale really had an aversion to a person who would work in a mine? See, I'm having a hard time with this. I don't think Isaac Hale saw that a person who works in a mine as a legitimate miner was somehow doing something that was unsavory at that time. But there's a lot of details that are left out in Joseph Smith's personal testimony that's found in the Pearl of Great Price. And it's that rock.
Yeah.
It's that rock, the seer stone, that's causing so much controversy now as it caused controversy for Isaac Hale back then. See, this is how he got the label as money digger. He would claim that he could find buried treasure with the seer stone that he found in 1822. He already has this seer stone in his possession.
And this is why he told Joseph Smith, I don't like your business, sir.
That's the business he didn't like. I don't think that Isaac Hale had any problem whatsoever with legitimate mining. And that's the impression we are given here. And Donnie, unfortunately, has bought this story. He has not looked into the context or the background of what Joseph Smith's history is saying. He's buying what the church is trying to tell him.
And that's the point. He's accepting Joseph Smith at his word for what he said in Joseph Smith History Chapter 1 and not looking into the rest of the information.
Now, the big issue that bothered this young 13-year-old was the fact that Joseph Smith was tried for money digging. And that is also true. He was tried not as a miner, M-I-N-E-R. He was tried for money digging or glass looking. There was a trial in 1826. Now, the Tanners have done a very good job on this. If you were to have a copy of Mormonism, Shadow or Reality, Chapter 4 is Joseph Smith and money digging. And in that chapter, it gives an account taken from Fraser's magazine in 1873. I want to read to you a portion that the Tanners have cited in this section of their book. This is State of New York versus Joseph Smith. And I'm going to read it as it is copied in Shadow or Reality. Warrant issued upon written complaint upon oath of Peter G. Bridgman, who informed that one Joseph Smith of Bainbridge was a disorderly person and an impostor. Prisoner brought before court March 20th, 1826. That date is important. Notice, he's brought to court for the crime of glass looking or being disorderly, and this is in March of 1826. He's not going to be married until January 18th, 1827, so he's not doing this to support his family, as Donnie implies. That doesn't happen till later. It says that he came from the town of Palmyra and had been at the house of Josiah Stowell in Bainbridge most of time since. Had small part of time been employed by said Stowell on his farm and going to school, that he had a certain stone, which he had occasionally looked at to determine where hidden treasures in the bowels of the earth were, that he professed to tell in this manner where gold mines were a distance underground, and had looked for Mr. Stoll several times, and had informed him where he could find these treasures, and Mr. Stoll had been engaged in digging for them. That at Palmyra he pretended to tell by looking at this stone where coined money was buried in Pennsylvania, and while at Palmyra had frequently ascertained in that way where lost property was of various kinds, that he had occasionally been in the habit of looking through this stone to find lost property for 3 years, but of late had pretty much given it up on account of its injuring his health, especially his eyes, making them sore, that he did not solicit business of this kind, and had always rather declined having anything to do with this business. Now, the reason why Joseph Smith claims he stops with the mine business with Josiah Stoll is because they just weren't finding anything, and it gives the impression he kind of talked him out of it and said, hey, there's nothing here. This actually said it was because his eyes were bothering him, probably from looking at a magic rock and a hat for so long. So we see a little bit more of the story here, and notice what's mentioned in this account. The fact that Joseph Smith had a stone, a seer stone, a peep stone, as they were known at that time. Now, this was in March of 1826. We have the records now. Wesley P. Walters, did find the Joseph Smith, Bainbridge, New York court trial records, and it does show that Smith was in fact arrested for glass looking, and he was not sentenced, however. We do know that, but you have to understand that the reason why he probably was not sentenced is it's believed that he was allowed to, quote-unquote, escape or go home on his own recognizance, because at the time he was still a minor. He was under the age of 21.
A minor, M-I-N-O-R.
Correct. Good correction there, Eric. And so that is why there is no sentencing. But it certainly looks from this court record that he was, in fact, charged for this. There was a trial for this. The Mormon Church, when this account in Fraser's Magazine was made public by Fawn McKay Brody in her book, No Man Knows My History, the Mormons actually rallied around this, saying that isn't even true, that doesn't even exist. Let me give you very quickly a point here. In the Deseret News, the church section of the Deseret News, the Tanners also cite it, saying, the alleged find is no discovery at all, for the purported record has been included in other books. After all her puffing and promise, the author produces no court record at all, though persistently calling it such. This alleged record is obviously spurious. The really vital things which a true record must contain are not there, though there is a lot of surplus verbiage set out in an impossible order which the court was not required to keep. This record could not possibly have been made at the time as the case proceeded. It is patently a fabrication of unknown authorship and never in the court records at all. Now, this was in the Deseret News, church section, May 11th, 1946. It was also quoted in Francis Kirkham's book, A New Witness for Christ in America, Volume 2, pages 430 and 431. I want you to notice, folks, the church is denying that such a court record ever existed. The fact is, that court record was found, showing that Joseph Smith was on trial for being a glass looker, a money digger.